who owns the wealth creation of the business? In the world of both private equity, it's shareholders first, even though the shareholders did next to nothing to actually build the business. One thing that we try to optimize for here is sharing wealth creation as possible in the business with the people who built it. And that first and foremost is the employees. It's a tricky thing to do, especially with companies that are our size. So we're always just trying to find creative ways.
What are some of the ways that you're able to do that, maybe just beyond monetarily, or have you cracked that code? Welcome to the show. I'm Gil Welsford, third generation Valve entrepreneur and founder of ValveMan.com. Join me as I hear stories, learn wisdom, and get industry inside insights. This is more than valves. It's business, legacy, and resilience. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome to our fourth episode. I am here at the Valve Manufacturers Association, recording from Alexandria, Virginia, and I am excited to have Brian OLeary from REOTEMP on the show. Brian is a second generation owner, so I'm sure we're going to get into some of that today. And we have been working with the REOTEMP family or REOTEMP business for a very, very long time. And they are very innovative. They've been doing a lot of amazing digital marketing stuff. And I'm really, really excited to have you on the show, Brian. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, buddy. It's good to see you. It's been a while. The first time I worked with your dad, I think you were in high school, so it's making me feel a little old. But it's good to see you.
You know, it's funny. I have a lot of people that literally knew me when I was like 10 years old. Right. And I'm like, no, like I'm an adult now, you know?
Exactly. Yes.
So it's all good. Cool. So Brian, maybe I'd love to just start out, give us a little bit of a background of you and who Brian OLeary is. You can also give us a little bit of a background of REOTEMP and how it started and where you guys are today.
Sure. So I think I'm like one of maybe 5 like native San Diegans in the manufacturing industry, which is kind of fun. But it's a family owned, family run business since the late 70s, at least since my dad has been involved. I, like you, sort of grew up making dial thermometers in summers in middle school and high school. And I wasn't too big at my fat. I had fat fingers even then. Not the best tools to go about making small instrumentation. But no, I was just, sort of surrounded in this business for a while. Went to school, didn't get into it right away. Sort of took a quick little diversion into the entertainment world and living on the East Coast. And that was a long enough time to realize, like, no, this is a really good gig of a business. It's a good industry to be in. It's fun. It's exciting. It's rewarding. And boy, to be able to come back and live and raise a family in San Diego is kind of the ultimate dream. So, and that's, still to this day, that's what, I'm running three boys, all under 11, chasing, sports and all that stuff. So, living the dream.
That's awesome. So I know we chatted a little bit before we started, but maybe you could tell us about what you did before REOTEMP, because it is, I think, you're actually kind of coming back home to radio, right? Getting back in front of the mic.
Right. So, a very highly relevant experience for running a manufacturing industry, or a manufacturing company. I worked at XM Radio and then Sirius Radio and then the merged company, which everybody's familiar with now, Sirius XM, from when I was 21 through 26 or 27. So had co-hosted a couple of shows on those stations at Maxim Magazine's radio station, Cosmopolitan's radio station. Super fun experience, especially in that age, at that time of life, being just a single 20-something living in New York, enjoying all the benefits that come with the entertainment industry. But also, I think, hugely relevant to, or I try to take as much experience from that into this line of work too, in two ways. Like one is you have to always be focused on your brand and how your audience is understanding you. It's like that was huge, especially working not just in radio, but specifically for big brands, at least at the time, Maxim magazine and Cosmopolitan magazine. Just understanding how the brand values are and how you project that brand, and sort of the fun with advertisers, audience, like just understanding that whole thing has been pretty relevant too, in trying to bring as much sort of marketing, advertising, branding experience and understanding into our business. But honestly, the biggest one, probably from like a life lesson standpoint, was that was not a industry or a lifestyle that I could see carrying through to later periods of time in my life. I think being 23, 24, living in New York, seeing all of my bosses at the time who were 35, 40, 45 with young families that were grinding the corporate grind, working 12 hours a day in hopes of getting the next promotion, next year, 2 years later, in New York City, having to live, an hour and a half train ride outside of the city because the only place you could afford, a house in the suburbs to raise your family was that far away. And it just like, it didn't seem like a fulfilling experience. And in growing up and seeing my dad in this, running this business in this industry, having the time flexibility, being able to coach my baseball teams and being home for dinner, it was like it was a really good sort of anchoring point for me to understand of like how I didn't want to live my life, and be able to really allow me to enjoy this business and hopefully enjoy what I'm doing and not at all regret having gone a different way in life.
Brian, you might not know this, but you and I actually have similar paths. I actually used to be in the entertainment industry. I owned a lighting design company, and we produced lighting for literally the largest country artist in the world, whose name is Morgan Wallen.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was fun. But like you said, you're working from, 8 to 6, and then you're going to a show from 8 to 2.
Right.
And that was when my wife and I were about to get married, and I don't think we were engaged yet, but I was, we're moving towards that path. I looked at this life and I said, this is not a life that I want to be able, I want to raise a family in. And that's when I ended up selling the business. But I want to get back to, because you have a really unique experience in like advertising and branding and that kind of stuff. And I just got to say, you're just an absolute animal when it comes to your videos, your advertisement. Anybody that hasn't seen the REOTEMP videos, you have to go onto their LinkedIn and see them. You just do marketing in a way different way than I think a lot of industrial manufacturing, boring businesses do it. Can you just touch on that a little bit? Like, have you seen that create any benefit, maybe from a recruiting standpoint or from an advertising standpoint? Or is it just more like, this is fun, this is how we're going to do it?
I mean, I think, it all comes down to authenticity, right? And like, I know that's like a buzzword, but ultimately, and maybe this comes from the radio training too, is like the one thing in radio, and this is also a very different thing in radio than in podcasting or YouTubing or other things like that, is that you have to generate, or at least in my experience, we were generating 4 hours of live content a day, 5 days a week. And you don't have time to script that, to polish it, to run it by a committee first. You just got to say what's on your mind in the plainest English possible and let it out into the world. And, I think especially in the sort of the engineering focused businesses, or just in manufacturing, and it's also kind of, I think, an American business ideal too, is like the lawyerly nature of our society, is like everything runs through committee first, and we just like boil things down to buzzwords and platitudes that don't end up meaning anything. And like ultimately, you should just speak your mind. And I think there's an incredible power to just doing the most simple thing, which is you just have to say what's on your mind. And if you are in a position to have like a wider audience, that doesn't mean that you should be regulating or polishing exactly what you say. Just, just say it. There's no real magic to it.
I love that, man. I think that's awesome. And it makes it more engaging. I think there's now, especially with like the advent of AI, I mean, it's so easy to say like, create a script for me. And I mean, who can't just read a script? And it's very obvious. Like it's not authentic. And it'll be interesting to see, but I don't know if AI is going to be able to replace authenticity. It's just, it's the twitch of your eye or whatever it is, right?
I mean, ChatGPT loves certain words like grit. Anytime I see a LinkedIn post, well, first of all, it's like the LinkedIn post with the emojis and the check boxes, like those gotta go, man. Like my entire feed is full of these, just like, no, that's ChatGPT formatting at least. But also like there are certain words that it always defaults to. I mean, grit is one that if I ever hear that word, it is like, nope, I'm done. That was GPT. Yeah, like that's not a word that people usually use. It's so yeah. But no, you're right. I think human to as this AI thing plays out, I think so much more human to human interaction is going to be valued, and truly just having people speak their mind and not running it through filters or lawyers or committees is going to be all the more sort of important and valued from all people, all consumers.
And I think I know you guys really value relationships, and that's one of the things that was a huge paradigm shift for us at ValveMan. Is when we first launched it, we thought, all right, well, we're just going to have this e-commerce website and people are going to point and click and they're just going to buy. And we made this shift. We said, you know what? We're actually going to use that as a lead gen. And now we're going to build relationships with these people, and we're actually going to help them. And that's when ValveMan just absolutely took off. And honestly, I feel very comfortable in this AI world. First off, because everybody in the industry is seasoned, we'll say, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit. But so they're not able, willing, even know how to use Lovable or Replit or even ChatGPT, right?
Yes.
But honestly, when it comes down to just authentic relationships and being able to talk with somebody, whether maybe it's online, maybe it's over the phone, maybe it's in person, but just having an authentic relationship is something that is really, I think, important. And one of the reasons I feel just so like secure in who we are right now, when a lot of other companies are like, oh my gosh, AI is going to take over. I'm like, well, we have relationships with customers,
Yeah, completely. Yeah. I mean, that's not going to go away. And I think, like we just said, I think if anything, it's going to become more valued as there's more and more experiences that consumers of all types, whether they're buying airplane tickets or hotel rooms, or they're business to business consumers buying from distributors, manufacturers, etc., is like they're going to have so many bad experiences and bad engagements with companies who tried to take the automation way too far. Yeah. And that it's only going to further value those companies that have an outlet to not just talk to a person, but that the person they are talking to has the agency and the freedom to build a relationship and to help them. Because I think that's the next level of it. And it's something that we've definitely struggled with here as we've grown, is to not create a rules-based business, but instead to create a values-based business. Is that ultimately, if you have a bunch of, this is the classic case of a well-known catalog company that is in our industry, where you call up their customer service. It's great. You can get a person. You're not stuck in an automated phone distribution thing. You do get a person, but that person can't do anything unless you give them either a sales order number or a part number. But what if I'm just asking you a question about what part I need, or I want this part number, but with this little, and they're like, sorry, just give me a part number. It's like, why have that person there at all if they can't answer those questions? And that is a big issue with scaling, is just creating those, like, a values-based business where everybody feels like they have agency to do what they wanted, or to do what is right by the customer, to answer questions, to go seek help when they need to be able to give the customer something when it's obvious that the company did wrong or something like that, without having to appeal to layers and layers of management above them, or these rules-based systems. So that's the other side of it too, is not just about putting the humans in place, but also giving those humans the agency to actually solve problems.
I love that, man. Thank you. Having these conversations is so amazing, because like we just get these like little snippets of wisdom, and I end up like coming out of these conversations with so many notes that are just like, for me, I hope like everybody else does too. Don't create a rules-based business, create a values-based business. That's awesome. We actually had a situation happen last Friday where one of our manufacturers that we sell for, they were supposed to ship a product on Thursday. They didn't ship it. It was Friday. And thankfully they were on the West Coast, because one of our guys, Josh, one of our territory managers, called it was like 7:00 at night, and he just called him. He said, you know what, just ship it UPS Red. And we got it to the customer when he expected it. And we lost money on the order. And I said to him, I said, dude, you did the right thing. He's like, I hope that was okay. I was like, you did the right thing, because
Right.
At the end of the day, like, we told the customer that they're getting this product at this time. Hopefully they come back and they're a long-term customer, and like, that's what we want to be known as, right? But I think I could do even more of that, of trying to just be a values-based business, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's super, super hard. I mean, it's been probably our biggest, definitely the thing that the burden I've carried the most as we've scaled. You know, in my time here, when I started, I was probably employee number like 37 to 40, somewhere in there. And that was in 2007. And now we're at like 170 plus. And
Wow.
it's, and even just on the sales side, like within the sales bullpen, when I started, it was like 5 people that were all sitting right next to each other and could easily collaborate and easily share best practices, tribal knowledge, understand culture and tone, and like how to build relationships. And it's really easy to have a values-based business there. But when you scale to having, at this time we have like, 25 people or so in our sales department that are spread out over multiple states. Even our inside sales team is split in half between California and Texas. It's a lot harder to nurture this concept, because everybody wants to do right by the company they work for and by their boss. And like, so there's that natural human nature to get it, quote unquote, right, to like do good. It's just making sure that you shift that intention to do good towards the customer and not towards the company, and assuring that your employees feel like, in the long run, if they continue to do right by the customer, you will be doing right by the company. But it's such a hard thing to do, because ultimately we all want to please the people who are around us, and even more so in a very like email forward culture that is today, that you're so much more influenced by the people who are close to you within arm's reach, who are at the desk next to you, or your supervisor who's talking to you every day, and your customer is just an email. And it's just continuing to nurture and foster that idea that ultimately our job here is to do right by the customer. And over the long run, that is the very best thing to be doing for the company. But it's far easier said than done.
That's awesome. Again, these conversations take us into like just amazing wisdom. This is awesome. Thank you so much for that. So, all right. So I'd love to jump into state of the industry. So I'm here at the Valve Manufacturers Association. Jason, my brother, and I went to the VMA, like, I don't know, national conference or something last October, and we're heading there again this October. And man, every company there, it's mostly manufacturers, like owners of manufacturers for valves specifically. And everybody there is like owned by private equity. There just aren't that many, second, third generation businesses. That's one of the reasons that I feel this sense of responsibility to kind of try to share a lot of this like wisdom from people that have actually built the businesses. So I don't know, man, where are we going? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, all you need to see, like, the only pieces of mail I get and the emails I get and calls to my cell phone are just, it's all private equity headhunters or brokers, or, I mean, it's just nonstop. And honestly, it's like, I get it, because we're, at least in our little niche in like the instrumentation, especially like the mechanical instrumentation world, we're kind of all that's left that hasn't been swallowed up. And it's, in one sense, it's like, I'm so torn, because in one sense, from a purely selfish standpoint, it is the ultimate tailwind for our business, right? Is like, we are still the nimble ones, the eager ones, the ones who have an actual long-term vision of where we want to go with the business. We are the ones that like that establish the values-based business, not the rules-based business, et cetera. And like, there's so many ways in which we have now competitive advantages over our competitors that we didn't used to have when they had either their founders or at least permanent owners in place. So in one sense, it's hard to bemoan the trend. On the other sense, it's like, are we the last generation who's going to know how to build things in this country? Like, is that, because you don't build things, you don't build great things with a bunch of tourist owners in the industry, right? These owners that come in, and the second they buy, they've already planned their exit, and they're looking to do X, Y, and Z in order to financially engineer this business in order to get out of it with an X% return. And that works great for them. I mean, they're incredibly successful. So there's nothing against what they are doing, other than from the broad industry sense. It's like, I think it's threatening to it's threatening to the American economy. I think it's threatening to the American employee. I think that it's just not, it's not part of the industry. It's not the vision of the industry that we work in that I want 10 years, 20 years out, where we have a bunch of these zombie companies who've been rudderless for the last 20 years, but are still hanging around because they have install base out there that's still coming back on MRO, but they haven't done anything big and bold and innovative, and they haven't retained their employees, and they've lost all their sense of know-how. It just doesn't seem healthy.
We see so many manufacturers and then also like competitive distributors, and this is what's going on. And so Jason, my brother, he and I run the businesses together. We high five each other because
Oh yeah, for sure.
we're just like literally if we just like stick around.
Same here.
I mean, because they're just I mean, like you. I mean, literally like multiple times a day, somebody's calling me, emailing me, sending me a letter. Hey, I want to buy your company. And they're always private equity. It's not like a Brian OLeary that says,
Right.
hey, I want to buy your company and we're a value-based business and this is what we want to do and blah, blah, blah. It's always private equity, right? So I do find it really, really sad. I think there's a massive opportunity that a lot of people aren't taking advantage of that are younger to just honestly be in this industry. I mean, I've talked to some other younger people that are in this business, and we're like, if we literally just stick around, like we don't even need to be good.
Totally.
If we just stick around,
It's the Warren Buffett's got a great like little quip on that. It's like, time is the friend of any wonderful business, right? It's like, if you just like, if you're in a wonderful business and you just are patient, it's your friend. Not to mention the fact that like big things and executing on big vision is something that takes courageous patience. And and I'm sure that like you feel that way with ValveMan. I mean, you guys, you broke through that e-commerce ceiling in the industrial instrumentation world like way earlier than so many others, so many other slow followers now. But it takes so much time and patience to execute on that goal. And where all of the great entrepreneurs of today and where all the venture capital money is flowing are the things that are instant satisfaction. Like the new AI companies, the SaaS companies, those are much easier to scale 10x, 20x, 100x over the first like 3 years of the business. The things that we do, and especially in the manufacturing world, I mean, man, the things that are just coming to fruition here today, like we are building half of our pressure gauges ourselves in the US. That was a seedling of an idea in 2010, right? Like it takes so long and so much patience to make that stuff happen. There's no way that if we are measuring our business on quarterly performance and we are constantly looking at a 3 or 5 or 7 year exit plan, there's no way that you execute on some of those big things. And those big things are what leads to innovation. And there's just like this stagnancy of innovation in the entire industrial valve instrumentation automation world, I feel, with the exception of like of a very few who are big divisions of huge publicly traded companies like Emerson and Honeywell and ABB and so forth. So
Jason and I have said this: we are building our business for the fourth generation, and whether they want to come into the business or not, that's up to them. I don't want to force it on them. It's just because my dad didn't force it on me. So I feel very blessed about that. But our decision making is so different. We actually are going, it's funny, we're actually going through our values generation right now, and we're doing, all these meetings and sitting down and figuring all this stuff out, right? And vision and mission but we're building that because we care and we want it, and we're literally talking about like is this something that sort of fits within what our family, like and I'm talking about just like myself and my wife and our 2 kids, because hopefully my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old are at least again have the opportunity, and like, is this something that could stand for what they do? But I think when you're making decisions that are just, I call them bean counter decisions, right? It's just you're making trying to just boost profits for the next quarter and the next quarter and the end of the year, you just make very, very different decisions. You don't make long-term investment decisions.
Yeah, totally. And I think we're in the same position too as any good business that has survived to the second and third and fourth generation. I mean, you've obviously succeeded to the point where you've built equity and wealth that has sort of decisions to make as to what happens to that. And this is also where the whole concept of permanent owner versus tourist owner comes into play too.
I never heard that concept, by the way. I love it, and I'm gonna start using that.
Yeah. Is this like who owns the wealth creation of the business? And if it is like, I think in the world of both private equity or to a degree, some of these divisions of a division of a huge, large, Fortune 100 company, it's shareholders first, right? And even though the shareholders presumably did next to nothing to actually build the business, like that's and what I'm about to say sounds super socialist. I just want everybody to know I believe in the free market more than anybody in the world. I love capitalism, but one thing that we try to optimize for here, and I think is kind of the moral obligation of a lot of businesses, is you have to optimize for sharing as much of the wealth creation as possible in the business with the people who built it. And that first and foremost is the employees. And it's a tricky thing to do in our industry at present, because especially with companies that are our size, we're not quite big enough to be able to afford or want to afford the fees that are involved with having employee stock options or employee share, like going to a private company situation with employee shares. Definitely can't, the ladder to climb in order to go public in this country is incredibly high, from legal compliance, finance, all that is like that's off the table. So we're always just trying to find creative ways to do two things. One is like, how do we financially self-fund the growth of the company? Is like that's a hard thing altogether, and especially in manufacturing where the return on invested capital is like silly low compared to other industries. So the amount of inventory and machinery and space and working capital, like not a whole lot in this business scales very well. Like it's truly like a crawl your way to scaling. So it is pretty expensive to scale, and funding your own growth is really tough. So that's sort of mission number one for us, is like, how do we make sure that we can fund our own growth? But then mission two is, how do we make sure that not just now, but in the future, that we are constantly sharing as many benefits of the business with our employees? And that's not something that is in the calculus of most tourist owners, right? Is like, these businesses are income statements and balance sheets, and they are trying to optimize the numbers in order to get an exit and get out of it and go on and do the next thing. And the people that are actually building the business are kind of left to fend for themselves.
Or they'll give them like golden handcuffs, right? And they're like, well, you only get this benefit if you stay for this long because we have to sell the business by then anyway.
Exactly.
So how do you do that? I mean, what are some, if you don't mind sharing, like what are some of the ways that you're able to do that, maybe just beyond monetarily, or if there is, or have you cracked that code?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at so many different avenues to do that, mainly from like an employee benefit side. Whether it's like, I mean, first and foremost is like time flexibility, but also profit share, and as much, is carving off as much of the profit that isn't needed to self-fund the business, is making sure that that is shared and distributed amongst the wide employee base as possible. And then the other things that we are at least investigating, if not like we're not quite ready to pull the trigger yet, but I'm okay. We're a pretty open book here, so I'm okay sharing it. It's like we're looking at ways of how you help wealth creation amongst our employees. So things like home ownership down payment assistance, or like additional retirement funding or kids education fund, things like that, where it's like you look at what the key levers of wealth creation are in this country, and like how can a company really help participate in getting as many of their employees as possible on the ramp of wealth creation. But like ultimately, I feel like there is a moral obligation to businesses and owners to try to do that as much as possible within the constraints of the business. But ultimately, and I think we're on the same page here with young kids. It's like, the last thing I want to do is, when I'm ready to hand over the keys, or when my time on this earth is done, is like hand over this giant sack of money to our entitled kids who are it right, is like, no, I'd much, and my my parents feel the exact same way with me and my sister, who are both in the business as well. Is like, the wealth doesn't necessarily just belong to the people who were fortunate enough to own it at the right time.
100%, man. 100%.
Not to mention, like, what are you going to do with all that money? I've never understood what the difference between 2 million and 20 million and 200 million dollars is. Like, what? There's nothing more that I would really like to buy. So
yeah. I
though all those levels, yeah.
At some point, I think it's just a game, right? I mean, it's just a game, so you can tell your buddies at the country club like what your number is. I'm with you. I'm with you. All right, so I'm taking us a little bit into a different realm, but it's innovation. It's what we're talking about, right? Is making long-term investments. You guys have done one of the best jobs of any manufacturer that I know in this industry in innovating online. And I mean, that's obviously like one of my areas of genius, but I mean, tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing, if you're able to share, like how you're doing it. Have you seen, I mean, I just can tell you, at least from like the Welsford company guys, I mean, they are obsessed with your website. I mean, everybody says REOTEMP is the easiest people to work with, and they're also the nicest. And I'm not just blowing smoke, like it's really true. So how did that like innovation come about? Is that something that, do you have like developers on your team that are working internally? Because that's one of the things we struggle with, is developers don't know valves, but valve guys don't know development. So yeah, tell me a little bit about how that's been going.
Yeah, so like, and it's funny because I think you've probably seen something similar in the e-commerce world over the last 15 years. Is like a lot of those sort of slow followers, they do it because they feel like they have to do it. So they outsource it. They find a company to try it, and it's just done poorly, right? So it's like the things that you want to do best, you have to do yourself.
Yep, dude, exactly.
So
I have said that so many times. I'm like, literally, the reason that ValveMan is the best way to buy valves online is because I was brought up around valves, and I am directing how the websites run. We're not just taking an ERP, paying somebody $100,000 and saying, make me a website.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So we make pressure gauges, thermometers, RTDs, thermocouples. We actually are making some valves now, diaphragm seals, thermoils, like all the accessories, and all of this stuff is like super low cost for them, or low value for the most part in the broader like mechanical or in the broader instrumentation world. Like this is pretty lower cost stuff that is high customization also. So it like hits in an interesting part of the cost variety matrix of like low cost, high variety. So it's just a natural pain in the ass to deal with, right? It's like
that's normally a business somebody would say, don't go into that one.
no, exactly. It's like it's a total pain. So I've always thought of ourselves far more as an industrial restaurant than as a manufacturer, because we are in the business, and like we are like the Cheesecake Factory of industrial restaurants, right? Like a menu that is 100 pages thick, and you can customize and like, yeah, I'm allergic to shellfish, and I'm gluten free, and I need this and that, and like, and that then you get the order, and you are expected to go and make it in a half an hour and return it hot to the customer, and like so the Cheesecake Factory's version of a half an hour is for us like 5 days. Like we've always pinned it on, that's been our constraint, is like we want to be able to deliver 90+% of our product line in a 5-day delivery time. And really, in order to do that, so much of it starts with how do you configure it? How do you quote it? How do you turn either a verbal description or an email description or a picture of the product into a part number without a catalog that is 1,000 pages deep and super complicated and super ripe with opportunity to configure a part number that isn't physically buildable, right? There's a ton of if-thens, a ton of exclusions in there. Like if you have this size head, you can't make this range. If it's this length of a stem, you can't do this on the connection size. Like there's so much of that. So we started in 2005, I want to say. It was my dad who started building a lot of this stuff in Excel to help our own inside salespeople quote RTDs and thermocouples and the stuff that was like way more complicated to do than say a simple like dial thermometer. And so we built a lot of these internal tools that were working really well for our own inside in order to just make it a little bit easier and quicker and more convenient for our inside sales to answer questions for our distribution partners. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it happened just right at the same time that like the web Web 2.0 was occurring and web development, and especially having and our website was starting to broaden out. And it was right at the time that I came to, where I said like, Excel's great, except this was before Google Sheets. You couldn't even share the Excel file, right? Like you couldn't have multiple people in the same Excel file. It was like the rev control on Excel was crazy. It was so complicated. Every time somebody went in there to change a formula or a price, like you'd have to save it as, you know, file number 102 now. And like, so it was like, no, like let's take this and let's apply it to the website. And so that's really how it started, was like, it was an internal tool that we said, hey, let's just open this up and make it all web first instead of internal, and open it up to customers, to distributors. And then from there, we've just, it's been the thing that my dad has focused on almost exclusively for the last 15 to 18 years. So he's really been the primary driver of all of it, and doing, to your point, what you were saying, like the product management side of it, which is like, okay, which parts of this product do you choose first in order to determine what the exclusions are later on? How do you do this so that at the end of the whole process, the customer can get a drawing, not just a part number and description, but a physical drawing of the product, which that's our secret sauce. Like
I was going to say, man, that's what everybody's like, oh my gosh.
Nobody else has been able to figure that out. And like, I'm not going to share any secrets here, but it's shockingly simple. But it comes down to the fact that if you don't have either senior management or executive level people with their fingers in this and doing it yourself, you're never going to figure it out. You're not going to be
Yep.
able to outsource this. You're not going to be able to send this to a web development team that is just trained in computer science and marketing or something. No, it's like you need to understand your product and your business in order to really do this well. And they're just going back to the tourist ownership is like, there's fewer and fewer people who even know the business well enough to do hard things like this. So that's the secret sauce.
Is your dad still in the business?
He is. So he and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he'll be 80 next year. He and I we share an office because he's only in 1 day a week now, but he's still chugging away on all of those configurator projects. He's got his own Jira board of items of either fix-its or new things that we're working on. We're starting to implement AI deployments like inside of our configurators. So yeah, we're trying to stay on the cutting edge, but it all comes back to like the main constraint that we feel like in our business goes back to that whole industrial restaurant concept, which is like, we feel like it needs to be convenient enough for a distributor, a customer, an end user, like a reliability engineer at a plant, to be able to configure any one of the 100 million plus permutations of a part number that you can get from our configurator, to do any one of that in a couple of minutes, like the amount of time that it would take you to flip through a Cheesecake Factory menu, and then to order it, and then to have us build it in 5 days. And ultimately, like you talk about the big vision for the business and the things that we have to be like courageously patient for, but at the same time, like eagerly aggressive to execute, is that we ultimately want to get that 5 days down to like 2 to 3 days.
Wow.
And just slim our business down as much as possible, and ultimately have, REOTEMP be the resource for all of our stuff in order to get stuff convenient, in order to get high quality American made product in 2 to 3 days. And we feel like if we can do that, if we can execute on that within the next 3 to 5 years, then we've got, a moat the size of the Pacific Ocean around us.
No one can knock you off your block.
Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing. Well, I have to thank you from the Welsford companies, the FSW group side. Our folks are literally just obsessed with working with you guys, and you guys get more business because of it, because it's just easier to work with. I have a quick funny story about the knowing, more than call it like the tech guys or the marketing guys. We always had our menu on ValveMan. It was, and I feel like an idiot even saying this, that I like let it go on too long. Our menu was SEO based, right? Like they would be like, oh, like this keyword is best, so like we're going to use the word ball valve, or we're going to use the word motorized ball valve, or we had all these like in our menu, like all these different words. And one day I was like, you know what? I've had enough. And I just sat down and I wrote out, as a valve guy, how would I like to go through a valve catalog, and what would I like for the, two-way ball valves, three-way ball valves, butterfly valves, check valves. And I presented the SEO team. They were like, that is going to tank your site. And I said to him, I was like, you know what? I literally don't care. I'm only about usability. And at the end of the day, I feel like if we create the best usable website, it's going to work out. And so it was a huge project. I mean, it was a 6-month project because we had to rename all of our products and reconfigure a lot of things. And we ended up launching it earlier this year, actually. And the site just took off. They were like, so of course, now my SEO group is like, oh yeah, well, I mean, when we launched, we called it Meganav. So they were like, well, when we launched Meganav, of course. I mean, it was, thankfully we were there. I'm like, guys, you were the ones that were naysaying this like forever, right? But it's since like made it just very usable. Like, for instance, no one looks up the word two-way ball valve on Google. No one says I need a two-way ball valve, but we have two-way ball valves and we have three-way ball valves. So they're differentiated on our website. I honestly don't care, because I want to not just show up on Google. I want to be the easiest way, the smartest way to buy valves. And when you go on a website, you either need a two-way valve or you need a three-way valve. There's no in between, right? So just those types of things. And again, only a person that really knows what they're doing, like you said, executive leadership, that's just in the trenches, getting their hands dirty, is able to make those decisions. So
yeah, and I think what you're also reflecting there too is like you've taken the time to get to know your customer and see the world through the eyes of your prototypical customer, right? And like I remember like that was a big leap for me as I got out from under the roof a little bit more, like in the 2009, 2010, 2011, like really trying to understand customers as much as I could, is like, especially as we were building our pressure gauge business, because our temperature business been established for a while. Our understanding our pressure gauge business, understanding the value that pressure gauges bring to the customer. Like, first of all, the customers don't care. Like, we care a ton about a pressure gauge, but understanding the fact that nobody else other than us is going to care even 1% as much about a pressure gauge as anybody else.
Sure.
Like, right? Like it doesn't feed into the automation system. It's not cool and fancy. There's nothing that matters. Literally the only time in the world in which a pressure gauge in a heavy industrial environment. So it's one thing like fire extinguisher gauges or fire sprinkler system gauges, like those have some importance on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. But the only time one's like in a heavy industrial world, refinery, chemical plant, power plant, the only time the pressure gauge matters is when there's a problem.
That's what I was just going to say. It's only when there's an issue, right?
Oh, right. It's like, there's a fire in there's a fire in the refinery. The first thing they do is they're going to shut the power off to that unit in order to not feed it anymore, which means you're totally, when you send operators, firefighters, troubleshooters out there, like it's all like all they have is their mechanical instrumentation. And the second I understood those two things, that A, nobody really cares about this all that much on a daily basis, and B, the only time they care is when it's like in a dire thing. That like ultimately changed the entire vision of how we go about on the pressure gauge side, which is that it's like, a pressure gauge isn't a measurement device. A pressure gauge is a billboard. Like, it's the only thing out there where there is a dial that people's eyes are naturally attracted to. I don't know if it's because we are attracted to looking at like clocks and speedometers on our car, but like for some reason the dial is like eye candy. And so it's a great place to either share things in an industrial environment of like safety notices, or to contextualize the reading, like, hey, if the pointer's not here, you got a problem. or whatever. Or like put right on the dial something like hot acid service, hydrofluoric acid, or something like that. Because in the midst of a catastrophe or a problem, you're going to need to know, like, the people that are out there aren't necessarily trained at what the proper reading of that thing is, or even what the product inside of that pipe or vessel is. But they'll be looking at the gauge. This is your chance to share that information with the presumably untrained person who's looking at it. And it was that like understanding of our product through the lens of our customers, and sort of having the humility to understand how little our products matter in the grander scheme of things in their world, that really like changed so much of our approach of how we handle not just gauges, but all of our other instrumentation too, which is that, like, look, our fundamental value to the customer is either convenience, like, hey, I don't care about this thing, but I've got a requisition to order it. So if you're the easiest place possible to order it, then that's where I'm going to get it from. So like, one is convenience, and two is customization. Like, for the reliability engineer that cares about the safety of the plant that is under their ownership, then they're going to go and make sure that all of these billboards, all of these safety indicators that they've got throughout the plant are reflecting the things that they want. And once we understood that, it sort of changed the whole way that we organized our business to go back to that industrial restaurant concept, where we're not trying to sell a commodity product one pallet load at a time of some, standardized thing that's going to sit on the shelf and move off a distributor's stock. Like, no, we want to be where you can order one piece of a custom range with a custom logo or a custom, indicator on it, and us get it out the door real quick and easy. And it was a huge breakthrough for us, and has led to, the majority of the market share gain that we've had in the last decade or so.
That is so cool. I love that. Yeah, and I do know that a lot of like the stuff that you guys sell has, customized dials and logos, and it might be green, yellow, red, yellow, green, or whatever like that. That's really interesting. I never I've thought of a pressure gauge as a billboard. I actually keep just a couple customers at all times and service those customers. And it's sometimes a pain in the ass because I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to be working on this other stuff. Totally. But at first I think it builds some credibility with my team, because they're like, oh, Gil's actually still like knows how to sell shit. But the other is I really get to understand like how a customer works and how it, would it be helpful if we created this customized omni-channel selling thing that we're doing, or whatever it is, or should we just not do that? And it really is very helpful. And again, kind of is full circle conversation, comes back to having a long-term outlook, right? Like, I don't think some of these private equity owners are selling instrumentation on to the customers, right? So
yeah, and and looking at the future there too is finding people, and they don't need to be. I think the other thing too is creating second, third, fourth, fifth generation companies. It doesn't necessarily have to be about bloodline. Is that sometimes, and that's what I think our industry needs is like more like apprenticeship programs, shadowing programs. You look at like some of the really successful transitions of leadership, even at huge companies, right? Like Andy Jassy, the current CEO of Amazon, he was Jeff Bezos's technical advisor for like a decade or so prior to taking that over. He was in essence his shadow. Tim Cook was Steve Jobs's COO and shadow for the 5 or so years, prior to Steve dying. Like, and at smaller businesses, I feel like that happens less. And maybe some of that is because there isn't that, like, there's this expectation that, oh, it's either passed on to the family or the family's just going to sell the business to some rando. But this, like, I almost think that maybe that's even something that we need to cultivate more in the industry, or these concepts of apprenticeships, mentorships within, like, and truly identifying leaders of the next generation and making sure that they have similar experiences that we got as kids, of being able to see multiple parts of the business, and not just going out and, whoever succeeds me as CEO, the last thing I want to do is find somebody who was a CEO of a $100 million valve company and just say, okay, it's your job now. It's like, but you don't understand our business.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because episode 2 is with Bruce Brockstrom, and he's a perfect example of that going well. Gil Richards founded the company, and Richards Industries, and Bruce was basically his right-hand man, and eventually, he sold the company to Bruce and a couple of the other guys in the business. But yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Well, Brian, I really appreciate this. This has been a really fun chat. I honestly, it blew away any expectations. Not that I had any expectations, but
yes, exactly.
This was awesome, man. The some of this wisdom that you shared is incredible. Don't create a rules-based business, create a values-based business. Man, that's going on a wall somewhere. I love that, and thank you so much for that. I took a lot of other notes too, but yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it. Looking forward to continuing to work together and having another 20 years together as businesses and growing together.
Same here. Yeah, look forward to seeing the success of the podcast too, man. I mean, this is congratulations, and let it roll. I want to be back for like episode 50 or something like that.
My goal is 52. I want 52 episodes. So there you go. There you go. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Brian. Have a great rest of your day, man.
Thanks, Gil.
See ya. Thanks for listening to Fully Open. If something stood out or sparked a thought, I would love to hear it. See you on the next one.